Go for it.
I love you.
Love you too.
Harrison Butker gave a controversial speech at Benedictine College that has received varying responses. Some showed appreciation for his speech as a bold declaration of truth, while others, even including the nuns from the Benedictine College, denounced his words about women and his view as Catholicism as narrow-minded and not representative of the Catholic faith. I will share my response as a Protestant, and I am joined today by my husband Drew, providing his views from a Catholic perspective. Thank you for joining us today, my love.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll be responding to this and discussing his speech as well as what others are saying. We're going to start by watching the introduction of Butker's speech together. If you've already heard it, you can skip to the next chapter of the video for our response.
Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, I would like to start off by congratulating all of you for successfully making it to this achievement today. I'm sure your high school graduation was not what you had imagined, and most likely neither was your first couple years of college. By making it to this moment through all the adversity thrown your way from COVID, I hope you learned the important lessons that suffering in this life is only temporary. As a group, you witnessed firsthand how bad leaders who don't stay in their lane can have a negative impact on society. It is through this lens that I want to take stock of how we got to where we are and where we want to go as citizens and, yes, as Catholics. One last thing before I begin. I want to be sure to thank President Minnis and the board for their invitation to speak. When President Minnis first reached out a couple of months ago, I had originally said no. You see, last year I gave the commencement address at my alma mater, Georgia Tech, and I felt that one graduation speech was more than enough, especially for someone who isn't a professional speaker. But of course, President Minnis used his gift of persuasion and spoke to the many challenges you all faced throughout the COVID fiasco and how you missed out on so many milestones the rest of us older people have taken for granted. While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values and media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic. This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. These are the sorts of things we are told in polite society to not bring up. You know, the difficult and unpleasant things. But if we are going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition. We must always speak and act in charity, but never mistake charity for cowardice. It is safe to say that over the past few years, I've gained quite the reputation for speaking my mind. I never envisioned myself nor wanted to have this sort of a platform, but God has given it to me, so I have no other choice but to embrace it and preach more hard truths about accepting your lane and staying in it. As members of the church founded by Jesus Christ, it is our duty and ultimately privilege to be authentically and unapologetically Catholic. Don't be mistaken, even within the church, people in polite Catholic circles will try to persuade you to remain silent. There even was an award-winning film called Silence, made by a fellow Catholic, wherein one of the main characters, a Jesuit priest, abandoned the church and as an apostate, when he died, is seen grasping a crucifix, quiet and unknown to anyone but God. As a friend of Benedictine College, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron said in his review of the film, "It was exactly what the cultural elite want to see in Christianity: private, hidden away, and harmless." Our Catholic faith has always been countercultural. Our Lord, along with countless followers, were all put to death for their adherence to her teachings. The world around us says that we should keep our beliefs to ourselves whenever they go against the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We fear speaking truth because now, unfortunately, truth is in the minority. Congress just passed a bill where stating something as basic as the biblical teaching of who killed Jesus could land you in jail. But make no mistake, before we even attempt to fix any of the issues plaguing society, we must first get our own house in order, and it starts with our leaders. The bishops and priests appointed by God as our spiritual fathers must be rightly ordered. There is not enough time today for me to list all the stories of priests and bishops misleading their flocks, but none of us can blame ignorance anymore and just blindly proclaim that that's what Father said. Because sadly, many priests we are looking to for leadership are the same ones who prioritize their hobbies or even photos with their dogs and matching outfits for the parish directory. It's easy for us laymen and women to think that in order for us to be holy, that we must be active in our parish and try to fix it. Yes, we absolutely should be involved in supporting our parishes, but we cannot be the source for our parish priests to lean on to help with their problems. Just as we look at the relationship between a father and his son, so too should we look at the relationship between a priest and his people. It would not be appropriate for me to always be looking to my son for help when it is my job as his father to lead him. St. Jose Maria Escriva states that priests are ordained to serve and should not yield to temptation to imitate lay people, but to be priests through and through. Tragically, so many priests revolve much of their happiness from the adulation they receive from their parishioners, and in searching for this, they let their guard down and become overly familiar. This undue familiarity will prove to be problematic every time, because as my teammate's girlfriend says, familiarity breeds contempt.
Okay. Sit back and relax, because I'm going to talk about how I feel. So, this is a graduation speech, right? This isn't just like some platform. Well, okay, we'll get to that in a second. They just graduated. They don't want to sit here and listen to you complain about the world and politics today. And just as like a speech at a college, this is anyway, aside from that, he talked about something else that kind of made me like cringe a little bit. I think it was his I was kind of forced upon this platform where I have to share my thoughts. You don't have to share your thoughts.
No.
You're not supposed to just do it because you're there and that's what you're doing. So it seems like he wanted a way to throw his feelings out there and force his thoughts out there on people.
It does seem like there's a lot of personal beliefs, not necessarily beliefs of all Catholics. Like, would you say that that's been your experience with the things that he shared as Catholic belief, or are these more just opinions?
No. Now, he might be like the first like radical Catholic that I've ever met. Now, I will, throw a little caveat out there. I grew up in a small town. I didn't have a ton of we had our Catholic church, but it was like maybe like mass was maybe a little less than 100 people, and it was a small church. And I don't know, ever since meeting you, I've been open to the world of Protestantism. I don't know if that's the word, but
yeah, that's right.
But it's very different. What he talks about feels a little more Protestant than Catholic, and it's not a terrible thing. It's good to be well versed in your Bible, and it's good to study on your own. But I don't know, it just sometimes that kind of leads to, well, I'm the only one who's right. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to go throw my ideas out there and force it on people that may not to believe it. And like when he talks about this stuff, it doesn't seem like he's the type of person to share information and try and like work together to come to some understanding. It doesn't mean you have to fudge on your beliefs and what you are, your convictions, but so that someone can understand and feel a little more love in the words and not so much the separation. But that's just the first part of him talking. I can feel that, but anywho.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, he starts off making these claims about issues in society and the Catholic priests needing to get their houses in order first. In my opinion, his description of what it seems to be in order kind of seems weird to me. It's interesting that he has an issue with priests being real people.
Yeah.
Like, for example, he doesn't like the priests sharing photos of their personal life and with their pets. And he believes that familiarity with your spiritual leaders or priests breeds contempt. He says, we cannot be the source for parish priests to lean on to help with their problems. And he says, did you have a thought about that?
Yeah, it's like, why is it so bad to just like, priests, don't worry about their problems. They need to deal with that. They need to get it figured out. We're here to help each other. Why can't we help other humans, which are priests, nuns? They all have problems. We have to work together. It's not about only my problems matter. You help me with my problems, but no.
Yeah, where are they supposed to go to? Who do they go to? Who do they make friendships with?
God.
Is it just the priests club and the nuns club? And they...
Yeah.
I mean...
That's not a very Catholic belief, I think. I don't know of that ever being, like, discouraged from lending a helping hand and showing kindness and caring for your priests.
Who are people.
Yeah, don't be friends with them.
Yeah.
All right.
He also says priests should not yield to the temptation to imitate lay people, but to be priests through and through. And I can understand how when he talks about not living for adulation, but that's not what spiritual leaders are supposed to do. But what is this problem with being overly familiar? He says that this undue familiarity will prove to be problematic every time because, as my teammate's girlfriend says, familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah. Again, like we said, I don't know how familiar... Like, I can understand, like, you get familiar with something and, like, you get tired of it, but... That's not what we're talking about. Like, you can't... Do you get tired of, like, your best friend?
Yeah, it makes me concerned about his wife and his kids, if that's his belief.
Yeah.
How can you have any long-lasting relationship if familiarity breeds contempt? Like, how did the disciples feel about being with Jesus daily? Did they... have contempt for him, seeing his life and living, life with him and ministering with him. Like you, I believe familiarity can breed contempt if, there's
A monotony
boredom
to
or
it, yeah.
lack of effort or laziness or dishonor towards each other. Familiarity can bring love and friendship when we honor one another.
Yeah.
And
I feel like the thing he said with the, like, I wouldn't expect my son to help me with something or show me the way. That's, okay, that's completely shutting yourself off, one. Two, I'm older. I'm going to help my dad whenever I can. Even as a kid, I was happy to help my dad or my mom. And, like, do something for them that I knew that they would like, because I knew it would make them smile, make them happy. And if they're dealing with problems, I tried to find a way to help alleviate some. I didn't want to be a problem either, but it's just, it's very what's the word,
Arrogant, maybe?
well, yeah, but I was thinking more along the lines, think about like what Obi-Wan said. A Sith is the only one who deals in absolutes. And it's like, yeah, he's kind of just like, it can only be this way or that way. There's no in between.
Like he can't learn anything from his son.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Jesus came back and said that there was lots of in between.
Yeah?
Yeah, if you think about it, like he came and said, it's not just this rule. There are situations where things are different. Anyway, continue.
Okay. So, I just wanted to mention that I don't think Harrison's view is uncommon, though. And people do have a tendency to put their leaders on pedestals and not see them as real people with real struggles, having problems just like everyone else. If a spiritual leader has to maintain a certain outer appearance of priestliness or wear a mask to hide their own human problems, I mean, this is not authentic. If a priest has their own sin, is it proper for them to just keep it to themselves? Who do they go to? Is it improper for them to never need support or friendship amongst others in their parish? How is that sinful? And are we to assume that they can never grow or learn from others because they are above them or have everything figured out? I do think we need to stop idolizing leaders, whether they are priests or pastors. They are human beings growing and learning just like we are. And I hope that a priest or a pastor, like you said, can lean on their parish or congregation when needed.
Yeah.
As Paul teaches us in 1 Corinthians 12, we are all part of the body, and all of us need each other. We all have our unique gifts and strengths to help the body, and when one part suffers, the whole body suffers. Leaders or priests are not above this or immune to this. We are all part of the body of Christ, and we all need community where we can be our true, authentic selves. Yeah. I don't support this idea of priests being above others and it being regarded as sinful to humble oneself to the level of a layperson. As Philippians 2:5-8 says, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Jesus Christ, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage, but rather he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. So I would say let us follow the example of Jesus, who, being God in heaven, seated on a throne, stepped down to be a man and enter into our suffering and relate to us on a human level, as the Apostle Paul also said in 1 Corinthians 9:22, to the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think you'd said earlier, you were talking about, like, who do the priests go to?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'll say other priests. That's their answer typically. But there are some things that priests don't know anything about. Like, I'm going to tell you, I don't think most priests would know anything about marriage.
Right.
I don't think they would know anything about that, or like if you had problems. Now, again, a priest isn't going to deal with marital problems, but in some relationships, they might not have like the answers. They might not have the right answers for all sorts of things, and sometimes just even a child can teach you a message from God. I think I've learned most things about kindness and loving and caring by being out in the world where I was, away from very fanatical religious types, and it's, I don't know, I've just known that you can find God's word and his kindness and his messages everywhere in the world. It doesn't matter. It's not just in one place from one person. So
St. Jose Maria continues that some want to see the priest as just another man. That is not so. They want to find in the priest those virtues proper to every Christian, and indeed every honorable man: understanding, justice, a life of work, priestly work in this instance, and good manners. It is not prudent as the laity for us to consume ourselves in becoming amateur theologians so that we can decipher this or that theological teaching, unless, of course, you are a theology major.
Huh? Is that what you want to say? Hey, Laura, this is all you.
No. I was gonna say, yeah, that's pretty much you. It's
yeah.
like he's describing is like consuming yourself in theological study.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, this is a message to you, Laura.
Yeah. So Butker said, it is not prudent as the laity for us to consume ourselves in becoming amateur theologians so that we can decipher this or that theological teaching, unless, of course, you are a theology major.
Yep, you need a degree.
Yes, because all of Jesus' followers who started churches had theology degrees, right? It is not prudent to learn about God ourselves so that we can understand what we are learning. It is not important for us to be able to make any judgment as to what we are learning, if it's true or not. Yes, the prudent thing to do is to not learn, not study, not know the Bible, and to simply be led along by someone who has a theology degree, trusting that they have it right. Yes, very prudent indeed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Honestly, this flies in the face of everything that we try to teach here at Divine Dissident. If we don't know what we believe, we can be strung along by any teacher or leader coming to us with quote-unquote truth. It's important for all of us to know what we believe and why. Jesus told us that the Holy Spirit would lead us into all truth. He didn't say that people would. He didn't say the church would. He said that God, the Holy Spirit, would dwell within us and guide us into all truth. We all have the ability to grow, learn, and seek God and gain wisdom and insight for ourselves, rather than needing someone to tell us what to think and believe because they have a title, a degree, or are priestly. I do believe that if everyone did their own study of Scripture and used critical thinking, fewer people would fall prey to cults, abusive leaders, or manipulative theologies meant to keep people under the influence of the few who have power.
Yeah. It seems kind of stupid to just say don't study the Bible. Just let somebody else tell you.
Isn't that like, is that a typical Catholic thing? Because I know when I used to evangelize a lot of time, trying to convert Catholics back in the day,
yeah,
that a lot of them, they would say stuff like that, like, well, we aren't supposed to be the theologians, we are supposed to learn from the priests. And that was kind of a common thing I heard.
They never told me that.
No.
I was never told that growing up when I was in CCD, it was important to read your Bible, although I will say a lot of us didn't read. But it wasn't because we were told not to. We weren't told, oh, don't study the Bible. Just let me tell you. That never happened. Not once. I think that, if anything, they wanted us to study the Bible more. But they would try their best, like, at Mass, to teach. They would also have, like, their Bible studies and stuff. So it's not like you're not allowed to study. I don't know where he gets this idea from. I don't know.
Maybe it has to do with following the priest who's the authority, kind of viewing it that way. I don't know.
Maybe. I have no idea. It's just kind of strange to me.
Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Don't try to be a priest.
Yeah, don't study. Don't look into this stuff for yourself, because you're wrong and you'll never be right. Even like odds, if you were to just guess, at some point someone's going to be right.
Yeah.
But like, that's the thing, is if you study it, you see more and more that, I don't know how to explain it. It's more like, some people take it at face value. Some people see it more as like, well, it's just kind of referring to an instance. And until you get out in life and experience it, you kind of can get the feeling, and I would say maybe that's the Holy Spirit guiding you when you start to see things where it's not just this yes or no. There's this in between, and whenever you listen, if it feels like love and kindness in it, then I would assume that that's probably the right way to go. Whereas if it's like, well, that's just something I want.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to deal with this problem, it's probably not. So
It's being led by love.
yeah. Yeah, that section was all you.
All right, moving on.
We must be intentional with our focus on our state in life and our own vocation. And for most of us, that's as married men and women. Still, we have so many great resources at our fingertips that it doesn't take long to find traditional and timeless teachings that haven't been ambiguously reworded for our times. Plus, there are still many good and holy priests, and it's up to us to seek them out. The chaos of the world is unfortunately reflected in the chaos in our parishes, and sadly, in our cathedrals too. As we saw during the pandemic, too many bishops were not leaders at all. They were motivated by fear of being sued, fear of being removed, fear of being disliked. They showed by their actions, intentional or unintentional, that the sacraments don't actually matter. Because of this, countless people died alone without access to the sacraments, and it's a tragedy we must never forget. As Catholics, we can look to so many examples of heroic shepherds who gave their lives for their people, and ultimately, the church. We cannot buy into the lie that the things we experienced during COVID were appropriate. Over the centuries, there have been great wars, great famines, and yes, even great diseases, all that came with a level of lethality and danger. But in each of those examples, church leaders leaned into their vocations and ensured that their people received the sacraments. Great saints like St. Damien of Malachi, who knew the dangers of his ministry, stayed for 11 years as a spiritual leader to the leper colonies of Hawaii. His heroism is looked at today as something set apart and unique, when ideally, it should not be unique at all. For as a father loves his child, so a shepherd should love his spiritual children too. That goes even more so for our bishops, these men who are present-day apostles. Our bishops once had adoring crowds of people kissing their rings and taking in their every word, but now relegate themselves to a position of inconsequential existence. Now, when a bishop of a diocese or the bishops' conference as a whole puts out an important document on this matter or that, nobody even takes a moment to read it, let alone follow it. No. Today, our shepherds are far more concerned with keeping the doors open to the chancery than they are with saying the difficult stuff out loud. It seems that the only time you hear from your bishops is when it's time for the annual appeal, whereas we need our bishops to be vocal about the teachings of the church, setting aside their own personal comfort and embracing their cross. Our bishops are not politicians, but shepherds. So instead of fitting in the world by going along to get along, they too need to stay in their lane and lead. I say all of this not from a place of anger, as we get the leaders we deserve. But this does make me reflect on staying in my lane and focusing on my own vocation and how I can be a better father and husband and live in the world, but not be of it. Focusing on my vocation while praying and fasting for these men will do more for the church than me complaining about her leaders. Because there seems to be so much confusion coming from our leaders, there needs to be concrete examples for people to look to in places like Benedictine, a little Kansas college built high on a bluff above the Missouri River, are showing the world how an ordered, Christ-centered existence is the recipe for success. You need to look no further than the examples all around this campus, where over the past 20 years, enrollment has doubled, construction and revitalization are a constant part of life, and people, the students, the faculty, and staff are thriving. This didn't happen by chance. In a deliberate movement to embrace traditional Catholic values, Benedictine has gone from just another liberal arts school with nothing to set it apart to a thriving beacon of light and a reminder to us all that when you embrace tradition, success, worldly and spiritual, will follow. I am certain the reporters at the AP could not have imagined that their attempt to rebuke and embarrass places and people like those here at Benedictine wouldn't be met with anger, but instead met with excitement and pride. Not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it, but the true God-centered pride that is cooperating with the Holy Ghost to glorify Him. Reading that article now shared all over the world, we see that in the complete surrender of self and a turning towards Christ, you will find happiness. Right here in a little town in Kansas, we find many inspiring lay people using their talents. President Minnis, Dr. Swafford, and Dr. Zimmerer are a few great examples right here on this very campus that will keep the light of Christ burning bright for generations to come. Being locked in with your vocation and staying in your lane is going to be the surest way for you to find true happiness and peace in this life. It is essential that we focus on our own state in life, whether that be as a layperson, a priest, or religious.
So he said, being locked in with your vocation and staying in your lane is going to be the surest way for you to find truest happiness and peace in this life. What do you think he means by this, and do you think he's correct?
I don't know what he's talking about. Staying locked in with your vocation, which apparently the only vocation that's out there is being a husband and father, and the other vocation, I guess, is being a mother. Not a wife and mother, just a mother, I guess. Well, no, he might have said
wife and
that.
mother.
Yeah, wife and mother, and then father and husband. That it seems like the only things that he cares about. And like, that's great. Yeah, like, I want to be a father. Yeah. I'm just playing. But it's like, I don't understand how being locked in with your vocation. So essentially, okay, do you know the definition of vocation?
I'm assuming that he means what you do in your life, whether it's your job or... It sounds like he's saying, like, from what I'm understanding, and I might be wrong, is that he's talking about, yes, him being a husband and a father, but also, like, his job. I don't know if that's what that means, according to, like, Catholic, what your vocation is, because it sounds like he's got the priest vocation and a layperson vocation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's only, like, two. There's only
priest and a layperson.
Yeah, there's only two jobs.
And he does say his vocation as a man, whatever that means.
Which I guess just means he's saying father and husband. And if you're not married, then you're jobless.
Well, he says, let me see what he says. He keeps talking about doing your vocation, staying in your lane, whether we are, as he says, a lay person, a priest, or religious, whatever that means. He seems to have a lot of advice for everybody in their lanes, you know. But I'm not really following exactly what he means. It does seem like he's telling a lot of people what to do. Yeah. And it's kind of ironic because it doesn't seem like he's staying within his his lane. Although there was a passage that came to mind for me in this, and it was the 1 Thessalonians 4:11 through 12, which says, "Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. You should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders and so that you will not be dependent on anybody." Now, I'm not sure if that's what he's talking about. But
well, that's probably why he's saying don't study the Bible, because then you can start, like, rebuking a lot of things that he says.
Or you're getting into the priest lane, maybe?
Yeah, like
that's their job, and your job is to be a lay person or religious. I don't know what he's saying.
He's saying no divergence.
I mean, I don't understand how living your vocation and staying in your lane, whatever that means, is the surest way to find happiness and peace. Like, he keeps saying that, but...
Well, it might be for him.
Yeah.
And, like, that's cool if that's for him. But some people, you have to get out and experience the world. Like, I'll say this. I had to experience the world, and I did coincidentally find, like, some of the truest happiness and peace in my life when I met you and became your husband.
For me, too.
So, all right, point for you, Butker. But...
Well, he only says that about her. He doesn't say that about himself. Like, he says, you know, we'll see in the next clip, where he's like, oh, her life started when she became a wife and a mother. But he doesn't say anything about his life starting. So he must have, you know, had everything going for him. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, he plays in the NFL, so... Anyway, I think that, you can find happiness that way, and he says it's the surest way.
Yeah.
But, I mean, of course, lots of people are happier when they have a companion in life. Yeah. It doesn't take a whole lot of, like, you have to be dedicated in being a husband. And, like, yeah, I'm dedicated, but it just kind of happens. It's more just, it's not forced. And that sentence kind of in a way seems like you need to force yourself to be this. Yeah. And
very boxed in. Stay in your lane.
I think whenever you're true to yourself and you're true to what makes you happy in life and who makes you happy in life, I think that you'll just be able to do it. You know, I don't think there's a lot of forcing things in our relationship.
No, it's natural that we don't have, like, these set rules.
Yeah.
Like, that a lot of...
There's things that Laura's a lot better at than me, and there's things that I'm better at than her, and we just kind of fit the missing pieces. So, yep. I don't understand why we have to... I have to be the religious leader of the house, and I have to force everyone to get up and go to church, and I got to do this and that. And it's like, it's not really my personality, and it's like lying about who I am if I were to pretend to do all that stuff. Mm-mm. And Laura's definitely, I would say, the religious leader in this house, if religious is the right way to even...
More like, I'm more interested in studying and talking.
I'm more about the action. I just kind of do the things, and then Laura tells me, you know, it says that in the Bible, right? And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, everything kind of comes naturally for you. And I learned a lot from you in that way, because you were just living it. You
Yeah.
didn't have to spend a lot of time studying about it or talking about it. You just do it.
Yeah, just observe the world. That's, if I had any kind of piece of advice, I'd say observe the world, observe others, and if you do this enough, you'll start to see things and you'll start to understand things better. But do it through a lens with love being the final goal. Love and kindness for others. That's basically it.
Yeah, I think Christians could do really well to focus more on love and kindness than rules and doctrines and
Yeah.
lanes and boxes and your role and my role and, all these rules.
Jesus kind of came back and threw out the rule book.
Yeah, he did.
And so, yeah.
All right.
All right.
Gentlemen of the class of 2024, you are sitting at the edge of the rest of your lives. Each of you has the potential to leave a legacy that transcends yourselves and this era of human existence. In the small ways, by living out your vocation, you will ensure that God's church continues and the world is enlightened by your example. For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother.
So I just kind of enjoy the fact that he's like, I venture to believe that most of you women out there are most excited about getting pregnant and having babies. And then a baby screams out in the background. Ah!
Yeah.
But you want to go ahead and take
Yeah,
this?
I kind of have a lot to say about this.
Thought so.
So I know there are some women who dream of nothing more than having a family and having children, and that's great. But this is a graduation speech for men and women having received an education to go on to having careers, probably.
Yeah,
Most of them.
I mean, he almost got to the actual graduation speech, and then he had to stop for a second. It was like, wait a minute, women, I got to throw something at you real quick.
Yeah.
About what you should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Let me get out of my lane real quick. And,
Yeah, just veer off for a second.
yeah.
So, I mean, are most of these women planning their weddings for just after college graduation? They got their husbands lined up, right? They're not going to go into any jobs. They're all, or most of them, are excited to just end school and then get married to,
Yeah.
people they
I mean, I remember
maybe
my
haven't
graduation.
met yet.
I remember my graduation. We all lined up, and like the women came running out through their degrees, and chose a man. Sadly, I wasn't picked.
Yeah, that's... Whew. I mean, what he says to me does seem a little bit misogynistic, directing his attention towards women. He says his wife's life started after getting married and having a family. And I wonder, is this only true for his wife, or did his life only start too after getting married or being a father? Are women the only ones in the audience excited to go out and get married? Are the women just sitting by, not really living while they wait to be married? But not the men. Notice he didn't say, my wife and I agree that our lives really started once we started a family, once we got married. He is making a great deal out of people's vocations and emphasizing the homemaker as one of the most important. And it's not that I even disagree with that. Like, being a mom is important, being a dad is important, but that doesn't mean that women cannot have successful careers, too. And, I'm not a fan of, sending kids off to daycare when they're small, but many women can and do work while their children are at school, like your mom.
Yeah.
Or they might work after high school when their children graduate after high school. Raising a child is only usually 2 decades of a parent's life. So does a woman's life end after her children fly the coop? And I don't know how he just assumes that many of these graduating women in the audience are looking forward to marriage. And it's curious also, the nuns in the audience, what were they thinking of his speech? The women who've given their lives to God, sacrificing a life of marriage and children. It's not that he's saying anything specifically to demean them, but he
didn't think about it.
Yeah, he probably didn't think about it. The nuns did speak out. So, according to a Forbes article in an online statement, the nuns said, rather than promoting unity in our church or nation and the world, his comments seem to have fostered division and did not represent the Catholic Benedictine liberal arts college that our founders envisioned. The nuns pointed specifically to Butker's divisive comments over women, where he suggested a woman's highest calling, or one of their highest callings, is to be a homemaker, arguing that the women that they teach have made a tremendous difference in the world in their roles as wives, mothers, and through their God-given gifts in leadership, scholarship, and in their careers. The nuns say they teach young women and men to make a gospel-centered, compassionate home within themselves, where they can welcome others as Christ, empowering them to be the best version of themselves. I have a lot more to say about this, but I don't know if you had any comments about that in particular.
Not as much. I mean, you basically said it.
Yeah.
I think I don't understand why it's just one person's or not one person, but I guess one group's thought that women, their greatest joy. How would he know?
Yeah.
How does he know that women are loving and happy about? Some women say things because they just want to go along with the group and say, I think having a child's the greatest thing. It's so wonderful.
Yeah.
And you're not human if you don't have one of those days you're like, I hate this. I hate all of this.
Yeah.
And yeah, those are just moments, and sure, people say that they're happy and that, oh no, I wouldn't give anything, I wouldn't give any of this away for the world.
Yeah, and they love their kids.
Yeah, you obviously love them, but to say that, oh, when I was a little girl, all I thought was, I'm just going to be a mother, and that's it. I'm going to raise our children, and I'll be happy. That's great.
It almost becomes an identity.
Yeah.
Being a mom. But then, like I had said earlier, what happens when your kids are all grown up? Then what is your identity?
Well, our mom was still our mom. She was very, I think it's for most moms, I think, will feel that way. You do hear about some that are once you're 18, you're out of here. I'm so happy that you're out. And they see it more as an obligation.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I mean, that's not the best outlook either.
Yeah. If you're a mother, that's great. That's wonderful. And you are okay to go out and try other things too. You don't have to just sit there and just keep popping out babies. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. To me, that's kind of crazy because I'll tell you this. A child with 10 siblings, do you think that, like, every child's gonna feel loved exactly the same? I guarantee it doesn't happen because I've known families who've got, like, 10 to 12 siblings, and, like, you cannot keep up with everybody. And
I mean, your parents had a hard time with
four
boys.
Yeah, 4 boys. And, like, I don't know, it's just not... Sorry, I'm going off on my own tangent talking about... It's because I see it all the time. There's people who are upset and saying, oh, you need to have as many babies as you can have.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have the money. It doesn't matter if you just leave it up to God.
Mm-hmm.
Well, God also wants us to use common sense. God doesn't want us to just be stupid.
Mm-hmm.
That's like saying, you should just go, what's the quickest way to that restaurant over there? Let's go through that bad neighborhood where people get shot all the time. We'll just go through there. As long as we trust God, we're all good.
Yeah.
God's okay with you taking the path just around it. It's going to take you 1 minute longer to get there. Like, I don't know. That's...
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes
frustrating.
in with what he says about, IVF and surrogacy.
Oh, yeah.
So, I find it, interesting hailing the wife and motherhood as being one of the most important vocations for women, while he's also vilifying IVF and surrogacy, routes that women unable to conceive and who want this have taken so that they can have that precious vocation. And I know a lot of women who have suffered a lot trying to conceive through IVF because they have that desire to be a mom. And, later he goes on to speak out against birth control. And so it doesn't seem to be about if that child is going to be loved and cared for. It's like you just need to trust God with how many kids you're going to have. So, no IVF, no surrogate, no birth control, just...
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of... I know it's kind of a common belief, but it doesn't seem healthy or helpful for a lot of couples.
And it sucks that, like, to just condemn anyone who cannot have a child through the typical way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can understand when it gets into, like, the weird stuff, but I won't go into that. But, yeah, why are we only supposed to do it this way, thinking it's all just God's will? What if God is willing us to use these things that people have found, like, doctors have found ways to help women have children or men have children? Because it's always saying women have children, but it's the men who are having children too. They're not birthing them. They're not pregnant or birthing them, but
Yeah.
it's also our responsibility. It's also our job, It's what we can share just as much love for our child as a mother.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't agree with the IVF. Is that the what's it called? In vitro fertilization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's nothing wrong with it. You're taking both parts that matter and putting it together and making it happen.
and, Christians might have different views on that, but he seems to be very certain that all Christians should share his conviction
Yeah.
regarding some of these things. And
I didn't read the Butker book in the Bible. I didn't.
yeah,
I don't remember
I missed that one.
Anywho.
Well, another point I'd like to make concerning women is that Harrison's opinions sound very contrary to the Proverbs 31 woman. So the Proverbs 31 woman, she did it all in her life. Now, she may not have done all these things at the same time, as this seems to sum up her life's accomplishments, but she was a shrewd businesswoman. She makes merchandise and sells them to traders. She has her own money. She considers a field and she buys it from her earnings. She is shown to be a very independent and capable woman, providing along with her husband for the needs of the family. She is a hard worker, but we should also note that she had servants to help her do this work that was needed for the family and their estate. And in no way does this passage indicate that her most important vocation was being a wife and a mother. The passage starts out by highlighting her character. A strong and worthy woman, a noble woman of character, is more precious than jewels, it says. Then she is described as trustworthy to her husband, a person who does good and does not do harm. Then her business accomplishments are highlighted, as well as her provision of food and clothing for the household. Then the purchase of the land, planting the vineyard, how she clothes herself with strength and makes her arms strong through hard work, how she provides for the poor and the needy and makes fine clothes for her family and for herself. She makes things for herself and she makes things to sell to traders. Strength and dignity are her clothing. It says she laughs at the future, her mouth is full of wisdom, and she teaches with kindness. She looks to her household, and her children and husband praise her. Now, it's interesting how this passage highlights her own personal accomplishments and character first, and more than anything else. And whilst Harrison is talking about diabolical lies that women have been told about getting accomplishments out in the world, we have passages like this that tell a very different story. It's one thing to go after success at the expense of your family, right?
Yeah.
But we see from the Proverbs 31 woman that her successes and accomplishments outside the home are noble and worthy of praise, rather than how some have chosen to paint it. Just as a man can be a father and a husband and have other vocations outside the home, so can a woman be a wife and a mother and succeed in many other things. And if the aim is to be biblical, then we should be encouraged to pursue those things by the church and by their husbands.
I'd say that, so like the Proverbs woman, she obviously doesn't, like, it's not just about her being a mother. So yeah. I think what kind of like stands out to me is like you have to be humble. Okay, from the perspective of a man, let's say you have to be humble. You have to be able to accept help when you need help. Pride is like one of the biggest, like, that's like one of the easiest sins to have, is pride. And yeah, we still all have it, but, and like, it's, we have to try and humble ourselves more. And if there's ever a time where I'm having, like, let's say financial issues, I'm hurting, and there's a way that Laura could help me, I'm gonna accept that. I'm not gonna be upset about it, because I know the opposite of that, and just me being, oh no, I can't show my weakness as a man.
I'm the man. I'm the provider.
Yeah, like, if you want to provide, I'll be a stay-at-home husband. I'm totally cool with that. There are many times that I tell Laura, I'm like, hey, how about you go do my job, and I'll stay in here and make videos. But it's, I don't understand why, like, it just feels like this stuff kind of gets glossed over in the Bible. There's lots of things that feel like they're just glossed over, like, oh, that's this one story. Yeah, it's technically there. Yeah, they'll get mad about other books that they're like, oh, those aren't supposed to be in the Bible. And they were taken out for a reason. So, I don't know. Laura's brought a lot of interesting things to my attention, and it's been fun learning more stuff. So I don't know. I think that she does a great thing, and it's extremely helpful, and it's helped me grow in my faith a lot too. And I'm just very appreciative of that. And if I were a man kind of like Butker's describing, I would have been like, what are you talking about? No, you can't do that.
That's not your vocation.
Yeah.
Why are you doing YouTube?
I wouldn't be closer to God like I am now. You know, there was a time in my life that I didn't really fall out of the faith, but it just never really got brought up a whole lot, and I didn't talk about my beliefs. I didn't share things with others because I didn't have a lot of faith-driven friends. I didn't have any Christian friends, and it was kind of a dark time in my life, but it wasn't. It was kind of one of those, oh well. And I will say, in this instance, it was familiarity. It wasn't really contempt, but it was content. I was just like, whatever. I was okay. And then Laura came into my life and shared a lot of what she knew. And it kind of reignited this thing in me. And I didn't realize just how much I missed all of this faith and talk of God and Jesus, and it just rekindled something in me, and so I'm very thankful for that. And if I lived this kind of life, I wouldn't have ever really had that. So
Well, I'm thankful that you didn't, because
Yeah.
that allowed me to be me.
yeah.
And I learned a lot from you by just seeing your faith in action and your life speaking for itself.
Thanks. Well,
All right, moving on.
I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker. She's a primary educator to our children. She's the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. She is the person that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation. I say all of this to you because I have seen it firsthand, how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer and closer to God's will in their life. Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true, but if you asked her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no.
okay, just Catholic thing. So yes, attaining salvation. I'm defending Butker here because I know a lot of people are going to be like, attaining salvation, Jesus saved us already, it's already done. No, he's not saying that we attain it afterwards. He's saying, so, okay, yes, Jesus died for our sins, and he has saved us, and we are guaranteed a spot. Now, there's lots of things we could do to mess that up. You can still go to hell. It's not out of the possibilities to think, oh, well, just if I'm Christian, I go to church and I do the thing, I'm good. You can still mess up. You can screw up somehow. And I think what he's saying is, I don't want to screw something up. I know Laura kind of had like a question, like when we watched it, she was like, what does he mean? Wait a minute, attain salvation? Yeah.
I guess from what you told me, it's kind of similar to where... It's okay.
Yeah, good.
It's kind of similar to how, Christians will say, if people fall away from the faith, right, then they'll be like, well, they were never saved to begin with.
Yeah.
That kind of idea. So I guess it's sort of similar to, it's like you're not following through.
Yeah.
Or you're falling away, or...
Yeah. So it's not, oh, I'm going to go out and buy my way into heaven.
Yeah.
No, it's not
just
that.
Saying that he wants to make it to the end, finish the race.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, I remember the first time we talked about stuff, one of your first questions was like, well, I've heard about Catholics. They think that they can get into heaven based off of good merit and what was it?
Good works?
Good, yeah, works. That was the big one, was works. I was like, well, yeah, you got to be a good person to get into heaven. What? I was like, obviously we're saved already, and we've got our invitation. We just gotta go. We gotta follow the right way.
And finish the race.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
That's good to know.
Catholicism.
Not an extremely important point, but I just wanted to point out here that it's very common for women to, put their careers on hold for family. And very often women feel like they have to sacrifice their dreams to support their husbands and their dreams. And often this goes unreciprocated in Christian culture, as this is often the expectation for women, but not so much for men. Is that how it was for you, Drew, like, as a Catholic in that culture?
To put your careers on hold?
Like, typically for women expected to do that.
Yeah, I would say probably a little bit that way. It's the expectation.
Yeah.
But I think that was also around that time, that was like the world felt that way too. That was a very worldly idea too. But for me, I would say personally, because as you know, my parents were the ones who helped me learn a lot of what I know, especially about Christianity. Now, my dad worked. He was a school teacher and a coach, and my mom was a teacher, and they spent tons of time working, and they both understood that if we both work really hard, we can provide for our family and take care of everyone. It wasn't like, you stay at home and you watch the kids while I go out and work double the amount so that we can survive. And like, what I see from that is like, how are you going to get to like know your dad if he's gone all the time working?
Yeah. And
you're just raised by your mom.
That's almost like having, a single parent home.
Yeah. Like if it was like she was widowed or something.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of men who, and this is a big one, this is pride. Again, we're talking about pride. Well, it's because I'm the man and I'm supposed to provide. I'm supposed to be that provider. It's a very prideful thing to think, in my opinion. I would gladly have you work, and I will stay at home and raise the children.
Yeah. Well, maybe one day we'll switch it up, and my YouTube takes off and.
Please, you guys make it happen.
No, we can both be at home working on videos and doing fun stuff and helping people.
I might want you to go out in the field for like some time.
Just to experience.
Yeah,
it.
just you get 1 week of it, and then we'll call it even.
Yeah.
We'll do it as like an experiment.
Yeah. So, does that mean like if I get pregnant, have a baby, maybe for a week you can experience what it would be like?
I'll eat a lot. Anyway, we're just joking around. But yeah,
no, I look forward to being able to help.
Yeah.
More, financially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't expect or want you to do
I don't
everything.
expect it either. Get to work, lady. Okay. So, yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Is that how it was for me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I hope that Harrison and the other men like him at some point will support their wives in their dreams and in their passions, just as these women have set aside their goals and dreams for their husbands to be able to do what they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
As a man who gets a lot of praise and has been given a platform to speak to audiences like this one today, I pray that I always use my voice for God and not for myself. Everything I am saying to you is not from a place of wisdom, but rather a place of experience. I am hopeful that these words will be seen as those from a man, not much older than you, who feels it is imperative that this class, this generation, and this time in our society must stop pretending that the things we see around us are normal. Heterodox ideas abound even within Catholic circles, for let's be honest, there is nothing good about playing God with having children, whether that be your ideal number or the perfect time to conceive. No matter how you spin it, there is nothing natural about Catholic birth control. It is only in the past few years that I have grown encouraged to speak more boldly and directly, because as I mentioned earlier, I have leaned into my vocation as a husband and father, and as a man. To the gentlemen here today, part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. As men, we set the tone of the culture, and when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in.
Why are you talking about this stuff? It's a commencement speech. It's okay to have your views. That's great. You can tell people when it's something different. But a commencement speech? They just graduated. Stop talking to them about this stuff. Stop throwing your beliefs at people. Now, I don't know. I'm done.
You're done? So, he said, men are not necessary in our home and our communities. He's saying that people are saying this, but I don't know who's saying this. I haven't heard anybody saying this. You have?
Yeah, I know what he's watching.
Yeah?
Yeah, he's watching like there's a lot of conservative shows on stuff on YouTube. There's lots of talk about it's younger women who are very liberal. Let's just say a bunch of them are OnlyFans women, and they're like saying, "Oh, men aren't important
in society as a whole. We don't need men." Yeah,
but it's like super like way out there kind of stuff.
Radical.
It's very radical, and it's this kind of stuff that they put on YouTube or these streaming services and stuff so that they can rile people up, because people getting riled up gets more views.
Yeah.
But I know what he's talking about there. It's just that kind of stuff.
Just really radical views that don't really represent
Yeah,
society.
They're very ignorant and naive people. So.
And then...
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it's okay. He goes on to say, as men, we set the tone of our culture. And I felt this came across as a very misogynistic statement, kind of as if men rule the world. And I think men and women alike set the tone of the culture. And then he goes on to say, and when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in. And, I've known from personal experience and from other women that they have found disorder, dysfunction, and chaos with a man. So it's not really about having a man around. It's about having a good man around. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's... I don't know. It's... Again, I think he's just trying to please people with what he's saying. I think a lot of this is trying to please people. Certain types of people.
Or telling people what they want to hear, maybe? At the college? Because, there was a lot of applause going on.
A lot of people there, maybe they believe it, or maybe it's just, again, another big word that comes up, groupthink. I think a lot of it's groupthink, like, well, let me clap, just don't want to upset the mob.
Yeah, this is what you're supposed to say, this is what you're supposed to do.
I guarantee if I was there, I'd probably have been, like, laughing in there. I'd have been, I don't know, I like cringy humor, and it would be very cringy just being there, kind of like looking around like, whoa, what's going on? But, yeah, I would say that's kind of a misogynistic thing to say. Like, men set the tone for culture. I'll agree in some ways, like movies where like characters are like overly sexualized. It's because they're trying to get men to watch it, and so like in that way movies are kind of controlled by men's view.
Yeah.
What is important. But as for like a good culture, it's got to be both. Like, why would God create man and woman if it's not supposed to be? A man decides everything. That woman's there just to help make babies.
Makes me really mad.
Sorry.
Yeah, but it's a very common view in the church. That's one of the big things we talk about on this channel a lot.
Yeah.
And try to bring light to other ways of seeing the world and other ways of thinking. But, men have set the tone of the culture for most of history. Really. In most places of the world until maybe more recently.
Yeah.
Here, anyway.
This absence of men in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation. Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the U.S., and a correlation could be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well. Be unapologetic in your masculinity, fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. You might have a talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something that you might think suits you better.
While we don't want the emasculation of men, we also don't want toxic masculinity. And I think there's a lot of confusion over what healthy masculinity is. Drew, could you speak to that? On what healthy masculinity looks like?
Yeah. So, one, I do agree. I think there is a lot of emasculating that's going on right now for men. But it's kind of like... you have to take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of people's view of masculinity is very toxic. And I don't really even like using the word toxic for masculinity or femininity. I don't. I'm just not a big fan of it. But what they're talking about is like, oh, you don't need to apologize for just being the man that you are. You have to, you're supposed to do all this, and you got to be into sports. You got to do all this stuff. You got to, you can't play video games. That's not, men don't do that. That's toxic masculinity in a nutshell. But healthy, like, masculinity is being someone who can take on challenges. You take on challenges, you fight through them, and it's not alone either. Healthy masculinity, you're not alone doing all this. It's not some movie where you're a hero who's standing up against thousands of enemies, but it's knowing when you need help, seeking it, and using it. One of the things that I like to do is I do a lot of filming, and I do a lot of directing with little videos that we shoot sometimes. And one of the things that was hard for me to understand at the time was allowing for information to come in that could be helpful and make the project better. And I was very, I guess, prideful in a way where I was like, well, I think the only right way I can do it is the way I want to do it. And you have to learn to accept outside help. I think that's one of the bigger parts of the healthy masculinity, and that's help from anywhere, not just other men, but from women, from children too. Sometimes kids can be extremely helpful, and you might not think so, but lots of lessons can be learned from children, from people who are dealing with all sorts of issues. Lots of broken-hearted people and people dealing with illnesses have lots of wisdom to share. I would also say for like healthy masculinity, you got to do I think getting out in the world and being more active is a big thing, and sharing friendship with other men and women is extremely, extremely important. Like he was saying, a lot of men are very lonely nowadays, and it's in a way like what he described from priesthood is kind of a toxic masculinity in a way.
Yeah.
So I think I touched on what healthy masculinity kind of looks like. I could probably go on for...
Yeah. I have a few things I could add.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know some of the things that I've seen with you, like healthy traits too, is one, being your authentic self.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not trying to fit into a mold or please other people. You're not being the manly man to fit in.
Yeah.
Like trying to please others.
There are ways to please others, but in a more like loving kind way. So like I'll do things to make Laura laugh, and
I'm not saying you're not a manly man.
No, I know.
That's what I'm saying.
And not to be, and that's another part right there, is not being upset by somebody mocking you and saying, "Oh, you're not a man because you play video games, or you dress up and go to conventions and stuff." That's not a man thing to do. I like doing that stuff. It's just fun, and it brings joy to others, and I think that's one of the gifts that God graced me with, is being joyful and fun and making other people happy. And so And I like that feeling, so I kind of chase that feeling.
That makes life fun and interesting.
Yeah, Laura might find me wearing some goofy clothes or just to make her smile.
Yeah. You are authentic about what you believe, and you share your thoughts and, your feelings, and you don't hide those.
Mm-mm.
No. Trying to think of something else. I know there's so many other things. Just being a good person too. Being kind, being understanding. A lot of those traits, being vulnerable, those aren't often regarded as masculine traits. You need to be strong, you need to be tough, you need to be,
Yeah.
resilient.
Don't cry.
Don't cry.
So I do cry. I definitely cry during movies, and I think they've got there's a few that you've seen where I teared up.
Yeah, I've never seen you ugly cry.
Oh,
but...
no, I don't ugly cry. That's not a manly way. No, but it just almost feels inhuman to not shed a tear in a sad part of a movie and relating with somebody.
Yeah.
And I know it's not real, because I can tell when I can be okay, this movie's not real.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. But if that firefly gets crushed in the Princess Frog, I'm gonna cry. Spoiler alert. It was so sad.
Yeah.
And then you got to go up to...
I think I got more angry that happened.
Yeah, you got mad. But I was so sad, and it was a happy sad too, because he finally got to be with Evangeline up in the sky. It was so great. That's all you want is happiness for people. I'm getting all watery right now. Thinking about it.
I love you.
I love you too. Continue.
I speak from experience as an introvert who now finds myself as an amateur public speaker and an entrepreneur, something I never thought I'd be when I received my industrial engineering degree. The road ahead is bright. Things are changing, society is shifting, and people, young and old, are embracing tradition. Not only has it been my vocation that has helped me and those closest to me, but not surprising to many of you, should be my outspoken embrace of the traditional Latin Mass. I've been very vocal in my love and devotion to the TLM and its necessity for our lives. But what I think gets misunderstood is that people who attend the TLM do so out of pride or preference. I can speak to my own experience, but for most people I have come across within these communities, this simply is not true. I do not attend the TLM because I think I am better than others, or for the smells and bells, or even for the love of Latin. I attend the TLM because I believe, just as the God of the Old Testament was pretty particular in how he wanted to be worshiped, the same holds true for us today. It is through the TLM that I encountered order and began to pursue it in my own life. Aside from the TLM itself, too many of our sacred traditions have been relegated to things of the past, when in my parish, things such as Ember Days, days when we fast and pray for vocations and for our priests, are still adhered to. The TLM is so essential that I would challenge each of you to pick a place to move where it is readily available. A lot of people have complaints about the parish or the community, but we should not sacrifice the Mass for community. I prioritize the TLM even if the parish isn't beautiful, the priest isn't great, or the community isn't amazing. I still go to the TLM because I believe the holy sacrifice of the Mass is more important than anything else. I say this knowing full well that when each of you rekindle your knowledge and adherence to many of the Church's greatest traditions, you will see how much more colorful and alive your life can and should be. As you move on from this place and enter into the world, know that you will face many challenges. Sadly, I'm sure many of you know of the countless stories of good and active members of this community who, after graduation and moving away from the Benedictine bubble, have ended up moving in with their boyfriend or girlfriend prior to marriage. Some even leave the church and abandon God. It is always heartbreaking to hear these stories, and there's a desire to know what happened and what went wrong. What you must remember is that life is about doing the small things well. setting yourself up for success and surrounding yourself with people who continually push you to be the best version of you. I say this all the time, that iron sharpens iron. It's a great reminder that those closest to us should be making us better. If you are dating someone who doesn't even share your faith, how do you expect that person to help you become a saint? If your friend group is filled with people who only think about what you're doing next weekend and are not willing to have those difficult conversations, how can they help sharpen you? As you prepare to enter into the workforce, it is extremely important that you actually think about the places you are moving to. Who is the bishop? What kind of parishes are there? Do they offer the TLM and have priests who embrace their priestly vocation? Cost of living must not be the only arbiter of your choices, for a life without God is not a life at all, and the cost of salvation is worth more than any career. I'm excited for the future, and I pray that something I have said will resonate as you move on to the next chapter of your life. Never be afraid to profess the one holy, Catholic, and Apostolic Church, for this is the church that Jesus Christ established, through which we receive sanctifying grace. I know that my message today had a little less fluff than is expected for these speeches, but I believe that this audience and this venue is the best place to speak openly and honestly about who we are and where we all want to go, which is heaven. I thank God for Benedictine College and for the example it provides to the world. I thank God for men like President Minnis who are doing their part for the kingdom. Come to find out, you can have an authentically Catholic college and a thriving football program. Make no mistake, you are entering into mission territory in a post-God world, but you were made for this, and with God by your side and a constant striving for virtue within your vocation, you too can be a saint. Christ is King to the heights.
Okay. Well, that was really weird for a commencement speech, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like someone paid him to go and talk about politics and what, I don't know, religious politics.
Yeah, his personal beliefs, how priests should be, political views, the president, women and reproductive issues, you know, rather than speaking as much to the graduating class and encouraging them in their endeavors, and their successes, and their futures.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to ask you what you thought about him, and, well, I wanted to ask you what you thought about, I can't talk.
It's okay.
I wanted to ask what you thought about what he said about the TLM, or the traditional Latin Mass, being the most important thing.
I didn't even know what he was talking about when I watched it. I was like, TLM?
Yeah, I had to Google it.
So, traditional Latin Mass, and I actually was taking a look at it while I was on there. And I guess it's like, I don't know, all in Latin.
Mm-hmm.
It's just all in Latin, and you can't really understand unless you know Latin. And I'm sure that it's very, I would say it's probably like ultra Catholic, if anything, probably more ritualistic.
Yeah, ritualistic.
I would assume, and that's like a scary word for Protestants that I've come to understand. And yeah, like I think ritualistic isn't the right word. I think it's more.
Sounds like a good word to me.
To me, it feels more
authentic,
traditional. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, traditions can be bad, but sometimes it's like I like to think of it like if he's going to TLM, maybe it's because, well, I want to feel closer to God in a way, because a lot of people spoke Latin back then, and it's like the same thing if you wanted to go and, I want to learn the Lord's Prayer in Arabic. Mm-hmm. That way I can say it the exact way that Jesus said it. Mm-hmm. Just because sentimental in a way. And,
How the early Catholic Church did things.
Yeah, I don't really buy the whole, I don't go to TLM because I think I'm better than everyone else. There's a lot of hateful speech out there about me being TLM man. But
it just sounds like a personal preference, though. Like,
yeah.
I don't know what the average person is going to gain over that above everything else.
It's going to go right over people's heads.
For other people, the community might be more important.
Yeah, I would say maybe the community, but I don't know. I think to be like, make sure that you go somewhere that has the TLM, to me, that's... Why don't you just go to church and learn things for yourself?
Oh, no.
Learn things.
That's probably why he likes the Latin Mass, because you can't understand a word.
Yeah. That's true. But, like, what's so wrong with getting your perspective, getting someone else's, and a third perspective, and putting all those together so you can better understand and think, oh, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
Why can't that happen? Because you might help somebody else by sharing your perspective. And they might think, oh, okay. I'm not confused like some people would say that you are. Like, oh, now I'm just confused. Maybe that happens to some people, but I think more clarity comes from sharing that information, like the way you see things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People with diverse opinions and beliefs can learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be around people who think all the same things about everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem healthy.
Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster. Just talk to Germany back in the 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nazis.
Yeah. I figured that much, but
Yeah.
I was trying to think on what exactly it was that they were all believing. So we're talking about the Jews? Or?
Well, I'm just talking about, like, thinking they were the master race.
Okay. I gotcha.
And it wasn't like they all thought that either. There was a lot of people who didn't, who fought for them. They were too scared because they were going to die. That was the thing. So, anyhow. Yeah, TLM. I don't...
Yeah. It's just such a weird commencement speech, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think most normal humans would think that's a really weird commencement speech to give.
Yeah.
I wonder what the people thinking, what they were thinking while they were there too.
Yeah.
Oh, Harrison Butker came to our college and gave our commencement speech, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. Although it did look like the audience liked it. He got a standing ovation at the end.
Well, it might have been because it was done, but... Yes! No.
Thank you. Can we leave now?
I'm sure a lot of people feel that way too. With the way that the world is now. And I talk about this all the time, but everything is being polarized. So everything is finding us. There is no in between, and it's getting closer and closer to that every day. And I think that just with how radical some people can be, it drives people who are in the middle further away because they're like, ugh, yeah. I can't deal with this. I can't be affiliated with this group. And I think that's a big problem for Christians, is Christians get too forceful and they drive potential Christians away.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I agree. Like, there's a lot of people viewing everything in black and white.
Yeah.
And so that leaves the people in the middle, in the gray, which would probably be us. Not wanting to go to either extreme. And that can make it really hard to find a church or a community as well, because your opinions aren't popular.
Yeah.
Or you hold opinions that fall on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And then so you don't really fit in anywhere because
Yeah.
either place you go, you're going to be faced with issues because you believe something that they don't. And they're like, well, you're not a Christian.
Yeah. And like, I'll say this, I'm way more of a conservative leaning Christian, but there's a lot of stuff that people say nowadays. I'm like, okay, that's just, no. It's, like I said, it's getting polarized, and not a lot of good things happen when things are polarized like that.
There's a Bible verse for that one, too.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it says to avoid all extremes.
Yeah.
So that's a good one to put into practice.
See? I don't know. But she knows. I just kind of feel it, and that's it. So.
Well, thank you for being on the channel today.
Yeah,
For
absolutely.
today's video and having this discussion.
It was a long drive here. So.
Yeah. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a comment below and let us know if you would like to have Drew back on the channel. Thank you for watching. Please like this, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to support this ministry, feel free to become a patron for just as little as $5 a month. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.